may very well not be what you're interested in seeing. So what I do, I wait till I've got the game I want. And then I will watch, certainly. I'll sometimes ask specific questions after, if nobody's brought it up. So I'm looking for certain things. I'm looking to watch different types of gamers. You almost are trying to channel different type of gamers in your design, right? And the best way is when you finally get them playing it, you can watch them and see who's the owner, who's the watch what happens guys, who's going to try to mess up everything just to see what happens. There's all these kind of things that go on. So wait till you really got a game. It's very frustrating to be a playtester and keep seeing games that just don't even have an end. I mean, I've been on sessions where they say, I'll say, what's the average point somebody gets? And so we've never finished a game. We don't really know. We're going to find out today. That's not right. I mean, these people are taking their time from playing a published good game to publish something that you're working hard on, but make it worth their while. And then you will find it so easy to get more playtesters. I've got 70 people on my list, and I can rotate around. They'll play anything I'm doing because they know it's going to be a finished game.
To Mike's thing, to add to that is there are two things you have to tell two things for the playtesters. One, you got to make it worth their while. I usually feed my playtesters, right? Lunch, dinner, however late they stay, I'm providing the food. The second thing is very important to tell playtesters, this is work. It's not going to be fun, most likely. It's a working thing you're asking them to do. And that's very different. And if they don't understand that, if they approach it like a published game, we're here to just have fun and see it, they're going to get very frustrated, and then they won't play test for you again because they won't like the process.
Just to give you a little bit more practical, I agree with everything, especially Mike's comment about not making it worth the playtester's time. I 100% back that. On the practical side, where to get blind playtesters, part of this is going to depend on how committed you are to making this a career or your full-time thing. So I'm going to come from the perspective of somebody who does this full-time. This is my life. This is my livelihood. Hopefully this scales down a bit, but my wife and I literally have organized our lives around playtesting because it's such a big part of our job. I would say it's 50% of our job. So we moved to Toronto, which is the capital city of Ontario, biggest city we can, moved into an area, found a house that was in a place, that was in an area that was easily accessible by most people, most playtesters in the city. My wife has a full-time job, is recruiting players all the time. She's going to local game stores, going to local game events. That's a big place to get them. We coordinate through a Facebook group, and we literally run it like a business, right? We feed them every day, every playtest. So it's expensive, but that also helps make it put some skin in the game for you, right? You're spending money on this to so you better make sure that your game is worth playing. Also follow up all the time, right? Follow up and trade up. So Mike said he has 70 players, you said, on your list? Yeah, we have 120 at this point, right? But it's work. It's work, and it's, even when you're gonna spend at least 25 to 30% of your time just looking for players and adding players into your list and rotating some of them out, even if they're working out.
So the point is that there are resources, as we said, conventions are one of them, you're at one. Even if you just pulled out the game and said, hey, anybody want to try it? I'm sure you would get some people. It's weeding out the ones that you feel are worth it to you and keeping them. Those are the hard parts, but that's, as Eric said, it is work. I'll be in the blue shirt.
Thanks. Well, first of all, it's quite an impressive body of work that's come up in this panel, so thanks a lot for everything you've given to our hobby. My question is, just out of curiosity, how many sort of designs do you have in the various phases sort of bubbling in your head or on your tables or in your house at any given moment? And how do you sort of manage and prioritize where to focus your efforts beyond certain deadlines that you've promised?
How about you, Mr. Board? We left off with you, so you start.
Start? Yeah,
Yes.
me too.
You don't have to have an exact number, but
Yeah, I'm got a few going on all the time. Actually, the difficult part about it is that the more you get going on stuff, the worse it becomes, because they all start getting very confusing. Mike and I just had a conversation the other night about, you know, the number of products that you can work on at a time and still be productive. And I kind of agree with him. 2 is probably about the right number. If you get more than that going, you start losing track. I've got like 4 or 5 right now, and I've lost track, I think. So, but that comes kind of with the territory. I do a lot of expansions for games that are already out there, and so they all are kind of demanding the next expansion, which actually kind of limits the amount of time I get to spend on new stuff, stuff that I just want to design on my own and work up on my own. I've got, I'm sure most of the guys here will tell you the same thing, and it probably has happened to many of you. 2 o'clock in the morning, you get up out of bed and you go to the desk and write down a bunch of ideas and say, this is a great idea for a game. You know what, I've got a whole pad of paper like that, and it's just that you don't have time to do it. So I would suggest that, you know, if you're going to work on some game products, try to limit what you're doing and work very diligently on the couple that you're working on, because I think you're going to be more successful if you're working on fewer than more.
Uh-oh. So I guess that sounds very, very reasonable, and Richard's a very reasonable man. So I've got about 11 games going on right now.
That makes you unreasonable.
He's far more unreasonable more than I am.
I am not a reasonable man. So your question was about priorities, right? And that, so, like, most guys here at the table, right, we have an infinite number of ideas, or near infinite number of ideas, way more than we have time. And so, like, this, from the stage of, like, inception, really cool idea, to this is a game ready to show a publisher, there's such a wide berth in between there. So I've got 11 games right now in all those stages, but like 4 of those are still at inception, right? They're games I haven't even brought to the table yet, made a prototype of yet. So chances are, the longer they wait, the less chances there are that they're actually going to become a prototype. My metric for me is what I work on. There's 2 things in parallel. Number 1 is deadlines, of course. I've always got a deadline of a game that I have to turn in at a certain time. If I don't have one from the publisher, I will make one. Just even if it sounds arbitrary, just make one. So this is your milestone. You got to get this game done by now, or just stop working on it. The second one is obsession. So for me, if there's no point in a game where I become obsessed with it, if it's getting me in trouble, getting me in trouble, like if it's distracting me from other things, then I probably will the game will probably end up falling down by the wayside and falling down the priority track. So like right now, there's about 3 games that I'm obsessed with at this particular time, and like Richard said, that's a good number. Like that's the most I can really keep up here. I work on lifestyle games, right? Like I do like Marvel Dice Masters during the day and other stuff. Like those games just demand so much that they also limit everything else. So I'm obsessed with that game. I'm obsessed with a couple other games at this point, but anything else, just I don't bother.
All right. Well, right now, I try to limit myself to 2 games in the pipeline. But as Eric said, there's a lot of games that are in inception at one time. The hardest part, was part of your question too, is how long do you need to design a game when you tell the publisher it's going to be ready, if you're talking about that or trying to come up with a deadline. I have no answer for that. I usually say when it's ready, but I'll give you as much notice as I can, or I'll make a real good attempt to get there. So I usually like to have one game that's in play testing and maybe a couple months away from publishing. And I like to have one game that's in that alpha kind of state where I'm playing all the time and making adjustments. So, and those are 2 games that at that point I know I will finish. I'm not sure where they'll end up, but I know they'll finish. But the length is so different. I mean, it took me over 3 years to do Jack the Ripper, Mystery Remedy 1, because I was doing other things. This was one of those, And I was doing trading card games at Wizard of the Coast, so it was like on my spare time from doing that crunch work that all of us know about when you're doing those kind of games, I wanted to do something a little lighter and more fun. So I took my time, but I really wanted to make sure it was special and good. So, and then one time when I'm working for WotC, they call me up and they want the X-Men trading card game based on the first movie in 6 weeks. Now, if you think about it, maybe some people can, and I have done games in 6 weeks that were pretty close to finished, but not a trading card game. So, but I did it. I mean, for whatever it was worth, I used dice, and there are ways to shortcut things maybe, but I did do it. But so that, that's a very hard answer, because you don't know until the game sort of reaches that stage where, wow, now it's really cooking, and then you can sort of see the end. There are other times I say I might be 6 versions from now before I get what I want. So, hard question to answer, but I think 2 games at once is fine.
What Eric said about obsession, I think applies for me. You always have these ideas, and I'm kind of like that dog in that Pixar film, Up Squirrel. You know, that thing where you get an idea and you just have to get it down. It's like you think it's the greatest idea ever, and you focus on creating a prototype and getting a foundation. But I usually have 3 or 4 of those going on, but I really have to work hard at controlling that. I always have one game that is the game, that's the project that I'm working on until it's published and on the market. So that's really my focus. But the other ideas, I don't want to lose them, so I like to get them down to some kind of playable form, even just to break up the work you're doing on that one major game, right? It's a lot of play testing, you're playing it over and over again. And frankly, you get sick of it, right, when you're playing it so much. So it's good to kind of break it up. And then out of those games, for me, one will usually emerge as the next project. It's going to be the next game I'm going to take to the end.
I kind of feel like a juggler these days because like Eric, I've got a bunch of them going. I did a head count between expansions and new games. I've got something like 11 in process that are in, they're in.
There's the magic number 11.
The number 11, they're in prototype form. Some of them have the rules written, some of them don't have the rules written. Writing rules for me is the last thing I ever do. It is a soul-draining process. I mean, you sit down to write rules, and first of all, everybody uses, probably better terminology than I use to stick with it all the way through because I'm easy to shift back and forth. But I even bore myself when I'm writing them. Just having to go, oh my gosh. But keeping all the projects going, you kind of always want to go to certain projects, but once you start having projects that have due dates, and you do have to have due dates for your project, especially if they're committed to companies, you've got to focus on doing those as well as you've got this new idea you're really excited about, that you've got to kind of just have your notes on and push to the side. But it becomes a juggling process and difficult to, especially if you manage to put a game to the sideline, to come back to it and pick it back up and really remember exactly the things that were in it and that were working well and how you magnify those. It takes actually, if you do that, set something aside, it takes for me a day or two to actually really explore it and get back to where I needed to be on it. So.
I got a question in the back there.
We got a question from the reviewing folks here, and that is, after the game is published, how do you handle or deal with the possible negative feedback that comes?
What do you mean possible?
Well, I'm sure you're all great designers.
I understand the
Never get
negative,
negative feedback.
Can you clarify negative feedback?
I can be really clear.
I'll start out. I tell you, it is getting frustrating, more and more frustrating, because you hear more and more negative feedback, and whether it's an error in the rule book or something minor or just something misunderstood or somebody just doesn't like it. I have a fan who rates all my games a 1 and writes dice on it on every one. On PC games. So he's clearly a fan, but I think it's. Sometimes they tend to get personal these days, and I think it does affect you somewhat. And it affects you mostly in just trying to get your mindset back into, look, why I want to do this. But, you constantly get reminded, at least I do, how many thousands and thousands of people really enjoy, what you've created, and that makes you feel good and makes you want to continue to do it. So.
Yeah, I would recommend if you're going to design games, just shut down your BGG account is the first thing you should probably do. It's been difficult for me starting out, but I've really learned a lot about it. And really, you just need to ignore it and not even look at it, not even read it, really. And just focus on doing your games and doing what you love to do and try to get across what you want to get across to people, and not worry about it. Not everybody's going to love your games. There's going to be people that do love your games. And that's true for anybody, right? So just don't get involved in responding to negative feedback. Just ignore it. Just completely ignore it and don't even look at it. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, absolutely, the way to do it. I mean, all of us don't like certain games, right? There are games I don't like, there are games you don't like, and maybe I design one you don't like, and maybe you'll design one I don't like. I mean, you know, games are as individual as people are. So, you know, BGG is a great place. It's a great resource. There are sometimes things that get a little strange. You have to, you know, you just move on. I mean, as everybody said, you think about the people that do enjoy it. And when you go to conventions face to face and somebody says, my God, I've played your game for so many years. There's a father telling me the father and son played it. Those are the things that make me do this, make me get up in the morning and design games, and the fact that I love them. So if somebody doesn't like my game, that's fine. I mean, you know, if they're lashing out, that's another issue. That's their issue. That's not mine, because it's a game. And if it's published and it's, especially if it does well, you'll be happy about it.
Eric?
So do as I say, not as I do. I agree with these guys 100%. So I boil it down into two buckets. Feedback falls into two buckets for me. And this is online feedback, right? Anonymous people talking about the game.
What kind of production is this?